That reaction caused these two women to turn towards me and draw me into their conversation. And what they got from me over the next hour.
Ashley's stellar sleep celebration is going on now. Snooze now and pay later with 0% interest for 72 months for select mattress purchases in store only and receive a $300 gift with purchase. Hurry to your local Ashley store or
Oh, you
Ashley.com
actually
for
bought
better
them all.
sleep
Holy
and
shit.
savings today.
We'll always have this island. Do you want me to do music? Oh, yes. Yeah, why did I? Is there not like a harbour? It's the native harbour, Commonwealth Island. No, wait. So what? Why can't I go away?
We got pasta.
Has to be rice only. Oh, you've got rice pudding, right? Rice pudding definitely won't work. Well, not with that attitude. No, it won't. No, it isn't. The great Maguire. Coming all the way out there without your rugby. Which brings me to the thorny issue of England. Where will the audience be? He said there'd be 100, but less than 100. Just you? Yeah. You did you mind walking up here? He's on the door. Oh my gosh, I'm not really used to having guests. So, what happened when you were at Mortimer? What was the last time you played together? I'm quite trying to guess, to be honest.
Are they British?
But God, what's happening? Who you invite now? Yeah, she's with.
We needed lessons. Lessons in self-respect.
And because this is Laura's very special TED Talk, these women were immediately receptive to unsolicited advice from a stranger their mom's age. Laura lectured these lazy, unmotivated millennials about why they should never settle for a shitty date.
Oh, shit.
And then, at the end of the conversation, these women were both so enamored with Laura's advice that they told her to write a dating advice book.
What did I get in return? I got gratitude, new friendships, and the suggestion that I write a needed dating book, something I had no intention or interest of doing, mind you, despite how complimented I felt.
Now, we're only getting one side of the story here. I can see this scene playing out in two different ways. This seems to be the way that it played out from Laura's perspective. The date was so bad, but I really liked him at first, and now I'm just not sure if I should see this guy again. Excuse me, ladies. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. Would you like some advice from a woman who's 30 years older than you? That would be so kind, ma'am. We'd love some advice, as we are merely stupid millennials who don't know how to navigate relationships in this dystopian age of absent social media, and we envy your generation of women who learned how to fall in love the old-fashioned way. Well, I happen to know a thing or two about dating, and then she talks uninterrupted for like half an hour or so. And then they're like, wow, you're so right, man. You have inspired me to know my own worth as a woman. Until I spoke to you, I had such low self-esteem that I was going to settle for a literal gutter goblin who doesn't wash his ass. But now that you've reminded me to believe in myself, I'm going to wait for a man who writes me poetry. You are such a wealth of knowledge. You should write a book about dating. I'm sure a lot of other women out there need your extremely valuable and niche advice. That's what she wants us to think happened, right? But I could just as easily see the story playing out like this. Excuse me, ladies. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. Would you like some advice from a woman who's 30 years older than you? Uh, what? I heard that you were considering settling for a man who you met on an app and has never sent you poetry, and it got me thinking about how low the
Already?
standards of today's
Oh,
youth are.
focus.
So I decided to tell you my entire life story and explain everything I learned about dating along the way. And then she just keeps talking uninterrupted for like another hour while these women just sit there, and then eventually one of the women speaks up and is like, wow, you really like talking about this? Why don't you write a dating advice book? I feel like you need to get all of this out of your head and tell it to someone. Well, I never considered anything like that. If that way people can listen to your dating advice, like if they choose to hear it, by opening the book. That might be a healthier approach. This TED Talk is from 4 years ago, and now with Laura's rebranding as Doormat Mom, we can see that little has changed about her approach of always being right. There's one part that doesn't hold up, though, when she brags about how successful she was at raising 5 kids.
I'd go on to own a number of businesses, write several books, create an award-winning children's television series, launch a celebrity blog, become a licensed foster parent, and raise now 5 kids to be surgeons, scientists, posters and napkins.
We're starting off 2025 with something that aged like milk, friends, because Laura has reinvented herself not as Supermom, but as Doormat Mom. The mom whose claim to fame is that her children don't want to interact with her anymore. She calls herself Doormat Mom, ironically, because her whole thing is she's not going to be a doormat, she's going to stand up for herself. And who's she going to stand up for herself against? Her own daughter, of course. Much like in her TED Talk, Laura's TikTok stories follow a similar theme. She was right all along. She knows what's best for everybody, and this younger generation of millennials and Zoomers just need to listen to her advice and do what she says, and then we'd all be better off.
It's the fault of their narcissistic victim mentality that
She never has anything to learn for herself because Doormat Mom is never wrong. So why am I, Savvy, talking about this? I'm a book review channel. I don't have any kids of my own unless you count the dogs or like the horror movie caliber doll collection over here. And I'm lucky enough to have a great relationship with my own mom, who's always referred to the dogs as her grandkids and loves to have them over to spoil them like a grandma should. And then she's also helping me learn how to make doll clothes. So I'm good on that front. So why did I get invested in the story of Doormat Mom? Why are we here right now? It's because she wrote a book.
conversation.
Another dating advice book. She did write that one a long time ago, but that's not what we're going to be reviewing today. She wrote a new book that just came out last month, a book called Doormat Mom No More, all about how her daughter stopped talking to her, and it's not her fault, it's the fault of this younger generation of lazy, entitled young people who don't value their parents anymore.
So if you haven't familiarized yourself with this, then the entire conversation going around Doormat Mom,
She wrote an entire Boomer manifesto shit-talking her own daughter, and she doesn't seem to know why her daughter doesn't want anything to do with her. But today, we're going to discuss that book, and it is the biggest hot mess of crimes against writing that I have encountered in a long time. I couldn't think of a bigger banger to start off this year of book review, so let's deep dive into the disaster that is Doormat Mom.
Anyone who ever knows.
It's just enough.
Yeah, you have been.
Up yours, wolf ones. We'll see who counts as who.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Savvy, and this is Savvy Writes Books. On this channel, we do book reviews, media analysis, and video essays, so I hope you guys are having a great start to 2025. There's no sponsor for today's video, so all I'm going to do is ask that you go and follow me on Instagram, and here's why. You may have noticed that I'm wearing a lot of jewelry. I've got all these bracelets. I'm wearing like necklaces and these earrings that I made out of repurposed Monster High doll accessories. So I've been making a lot of jewelry lately, and this year I have a couple big YA novel releases coming up, and part of what I'm going to do with that is I'm making some custom jewelry themed after the books, and I'm going to use those as giveaway prizes as promotional links to do with those books.
off now.
So you can have a chance to win some homemade custom jewelry from me. If you follow me on Instagram, I'm going to start that process in February.
Oh my fucking
So,
God.
I'm excited for that. Go ahead and give me a follow.
Oh my fucking God, I hate this! Dickhead.
In this book, Laura tells us the gripping tale of how her youngest daughter moved to Australia and met a man that she was planning to marry. Throughout the story, she sprinkles in bits of contempt for her daughter, like talking about how she didn't want to pay for her daughter's ticket to Australia because her daughter never commits to anything. So the fiancé asks for Laura's blessing before marrying her daughter, and Laura finds it so charming because young people today should be asking their fiancé's parents for their blessing first. Laura gets her blessing even though she's not totally confident that her daughter's going to go through with the marriage because her daughter, of course, is a piece of millennial hipster trash with no commitment if it bit her on the booty cheek. So her daughter starts planning the wedding, and then she decides that for the sake of convenience, she's going to have a ceremony in Australia, and then she'll have another celebration in the U.S. when she and her new husband come back to visit so they can celebrate with all of their American friends and family and people won't have to travel. So she tells Laura that she should come to the U.S. wedding, not the Australian wedding. It seems like she's keeping those celebrations separate, which seems convenient considering Australia is halfway around the world from the U.S. But Laura gets super offended and claims that her daughter is an ungrateful bastard because she's her mother and she should be invited to the Australia ceremony too. And now that she's not invited, she's revoking her blessing from their marriage. So her daughter's like, okay, Mom, fuck this, I'm done with your drama, okay? And I'm gonna have my wedding in Australia. Don't bother coming, I can't deal with this. And then She assumedly cancels the U.S. wedding celebration, and Laura decides to write this book about how much her daughter sucks, and then she proudly announces in the book that she decided to release it during the same week as her daughter's Australian wedding, so that her daughter's wedding joy could be clouded by knowing that her mom just published a book about how much she hates her. That is the plot of Doormat Mom No More. Now we can get into the nitty-gritty. I think the biggest surprise about Laura is that this isn't her only book. Like, this woman writes professionally, and that is shocking. You're going to see what I mean. Here's just a quick example, okay? On the first page of chapter 1, Laura says, I was, literally, beside myself with shock. Literally beside yourself?
Lazy
That's
Joe.
literally a joke from American Girl's book Meet Kit, which came out in 2000, now a quarter century ago. There's a little vignette illustration in the book where Kit's writing her 1930s Great Depression era newspaper on her typewriter, and she hears her neighbor say that she's feeling literally beside herself, so she draws a picture of that woman being cloned so she can be literally beside herself. I first read that book when I was 8 years old. It came out in 2000. I was the target audience for that joke, and Laura's over here writing a parenting advice book claiming to be literally beside herself, and we're supposed to take that seriously? I know that's kind of a petty nitpick to start off this review with. I know people use the word literally for emphasis nowadays, and language evolves along with usage, so we're going to get into some more substantive critiques in a moment, but as we go through these bigger critiques, I want you to keep in mind that Laura Wellington has written and published multiple books, including romance novels, a children's book series, and a book of dating advice. This is far from her only book. When I review books by political influencers or TikTok moms or social media gurus or whatever, people who are famous for something other than their writing, I'm not usually that surprised when their books suck. The book is clearly just a money grab meant to cash in on their audience. But this woman does actually write as part of her career. I cannot get over that. Like, Colleen Hoover looks like Shakespeare next to this woman, okay? Laura has a habit throughout this book of saying in lieu of, which she means like in light of or apropos or something like that. For example, when she's
You know
talking
what the
about
word means.
the things she said to her daughter when they were
Yeah,
first going
retarded.
no contact, she says, I don't say it lightly, especially in lieu of the difficult circumstances. In lieu of means instead of. That's why when you get a funeral announcement, it might say something like, in lieu of flowers, please donate to our family's favorite charities. So this sentence, saying that Laura is making a statement which she doesn't say lightly, she's saying that instead of
Got you, son.
the difficult circumstances, instead of the entire concept of difficult circumstances, no, that doesn't make any sense. She's talking about how the difficult circumstances are context for why she's making such a heavy statement in the first place. So we would rewrite this sentence as, I don't say it lightly, especially considering the difficult circumstances. In lieu of does not work here. On that same page, she says foolproof plan instead of foolproof plan, and that's just hilarious. There's no instruction manual, no foolproof plan that outlines the exact right steps to move you and your family forward. The only situation I can think of where foolproof plan would apply is if the plan was just like, step 1, drink absinthe. I guess that would be a foolproof plan. Who knows, maybe that was Laura's plan before writing this book. That would explain a few things. So shortly after, we get to the thesis of Laura's book, which is this. To put it bluntly, good parents can wind up with adult children who are simply ungrateful, and among the many that do are those who are neither at fault nor let off easy. Yet they are automatically assigned all of the blame for their adult kids' toxic and unrelenting behavior, regardless, simply because society's agenda-driven experts, culture warriors, and those who feed on hate deem it so. I wish I could just squeeze all the bitterness dripping out of that thesis. Squeeze out the bitterness, save it, repurpose it to use as bitters, mix it into my bourbon, make a nice little old-fashioned. Now that's what I call a foolproof plan. There are also a lot of strange writing choices in that paragraph that I think say a lot about Laura's perspective. First, she has a bad habit of hyphenating verbs and their participles. She does this pretty frequently throughout the book. So when you have a phrase like wind up, the word up in that sentence is not functioning as a preposition like the word up usually does. Up can also function as an adverb, which this is kind of adverb adjacent, but basically up is modifying the verb wind. It's not fully functioning as an adverb because adverbs can modify other words or phrases in the sense like they can modify adjectives and the verb phrase as a whole besides the main verb, but when you look at the phrase wind up, it always has to stay like that. The word wind comes before the word up. It is attached in that way as a phrase. When we have a phrase like that, we will call the word up in this.
At Grand Canyon University, we believe in equal opportunity, and the
Fucking
American
got you, son.
honoring your sacred vocation of business. You, your family, your friends, and your community. GCU's MBA degree program
Fucking
is 100%
Jesus.